CSIS 2440 is filmed before a live studio audience.
Okay, we're back to the Palindrome site. Today is part 2. And the way I like to do this for the class anyway is I open up my 2440 folder here and I will find the palindrome that we did last time and I will copy and paste that folder, duplicate it, and just rename it to like Palindrome B. And so every time each class will just make that, and so now if I need to look at the old code for you guys or to look back at how something was written, we'll have a copy of it, all right? And here it is. This is where we got to last time. Right now, if we run this, let's go ahead and do that in the browser. And right now it's showing Madam I Madam has 14 characters and it's 3 words, all right? First thing we need to do, this is a PHP site. However, there's no such thing really as a PHP site. It's always an HTML site, right? PHP just generates HTML for you. And I know I say that a lot, but I want to get that message sinking into your brain that PHP is nothing more than your HTML generator. You're writing code that makes things change on the fly to generate raw HTML. And if you look at this, we see that that's all it is. That's just some raw HTML. Now, what's wrong with this HTML on the screen here? Yes, exactly right. Yeah, we're missing the doc type, the HTML tag, blah, blah, blah. So let's do that real quick. And we close out the HTML. Now we have an official valid site that theoretically should validate if we run it through an HTML validator, right? Let's run it again, refresh, open up the code, and that looks much better, okay? Next thing I want to do is a teeny bit of CSS. And every semester I debate this question. Should I hold off on the CSS until we finish building the whole site? Or should I do it as we go? And the answer is we're going to kind of do a little bit of both. The reason being is because as a PHP programmer, you're not going to not use CSS, right? You're not going to, you can't avoid it. You're going to have to use it, just like HTML. The only thing I want to change though is one little teeny thing for now. And I want this right here to be highlighted, either green if it's good or red if it's not. That's all. So I'm not going to do anything fancy here. I'm just going to make sure we link off to a style sheet. I need to target this and this. How can I target that? How about just wrap it in a span tag, right? So we're just going to wrap it around the true and false. Remember that true and false, that's just the string, the word true. That's not the Boolean value. We use the ternary operator here to say, oh, in the event that this thing returns true, print the word true. In the event that it returns false, print the word false. Again, we could switch those with any words we want. But we're going to put span tags around those, like so. And then we'll put one there and here. And then the other thing we're going to do is we need to put a class on it, right? We'll put a class called good and a class called bad or something like that, right? So the good one goes here, class equals, and we need single quotes because my echo is using double quotes at the moment. So single quotes for the class, and we'll just call it message, something like that. And this one we will call warning. There, like that. So before I put any CSS on it, let's just see what that does. Refresh. Nothing, right? Doesn't change anything except when you look at the code. Now what do we have? We have the word true right here with a class, with a span that has a class called message wrapped around it, okay? All right, so now we can target that and style it. And we shall. Here we go, let's refresh and see, and we get nothing. Awesome. The reason we couldn't get this working is because I'm an idiot. I forgot to put the file path of the CSS folder, or the CSS file. So there we go, now it's in there, we refresh, there. That's what I want. Now let's just change it so we see what happens when it's not a palindrome. We'll just put some other character in here. And we get that. That's all I want, just so we can see it a little better. Okay. enough of that. Let's get into the PHP, why we're here today. What I want is, ultimately, this site is going to have a whole bunch of these on the screen, right? Maybe like a little square border around it or something, and just tiles of them. And it's going to have Madam I'm Adam, and it's going to have Eve, and it's going to have senile felines, and it's going to have a whole bunch of other different palindromes, or maybe non-palindromes, okay? So this block of code here, line 9 or line 10 through 15, it's going to happen over and over again, right? For every single palindrome we try out. So what's an approach to solving that problem? Yes, a function. Turn that whole mess right there, line 10 through 15, into a function, okay? And then call the function for every palindrome we're going to try out, okay? So what I wanted to point out here, we talked about this the other day in class when we were looking at loops and branches. We have to remember that I have not taught you guys how to get user input yet. So at the moment, we have to pretend like we got user input. So line 10 there is mimicking the user's input. So we would ask them something like, please enter a palindrome, and we'd have a form they could fill out and click on. And then we would take that and put it into this variable called input. So some magic get user input code happens here, okay? We'll learn that another day. For now, just press the I believe button. Know that somehow we magically got that from the user. Okay, once we've gotten that from the user, we want to make this a function, and we want to call this function, pass in the words Madam I'm Adam to this function here. So let's just give it a name, function, output, and behold, we now have a function. I mean, it's that simple, okay? Right now, this function is trying to access some variable called input. Can it get this one? Not the way the code's written, it cannot. There is a way to get that, like directly jump outside the function and get it. We'll talk about that later. But for now, yeah, this input does not exist inside the scope of this function, okay? So let's put one in there. We'll call it input. That's it. So is this gonna work? Yeah, we gotta call it, right? So we say echo, or we'll just say output input, right? That is deep. So now let's get some, that's right. Let's get some clarity here. This input here is what the user typed in. And we did our magic and we dumped their input into this variable called input, okay? Then we said, hey, output function, here, take this input. And then once this input, which happens to be Madam I'm Adam, which is with that extra D, we'll move that. Madam I'm Adam right here, give it to, I'm telling you to go find what you mean. What does output function mean? The definition is from 14 through 22. And hand Madam I'm Adam to there. So now Madam I'm Adam is here. And now every time we call it here and here, we're referring to Madam I'm Adam. This input variable is not this one. It is a different variable, okay? They have different scope. To minimize the confusion here, I'm going to rename the first one, right? So I'm going to call this user input, and that's what we're handing off to the function. One way to think of a function, Karen mentioned this the other day, and I never really thought of it this way. It's kind of a cool way to think about it. I always call them magic boxes. If you've been in my programming classes before, to me, a function is a magic box. There's some magic box that can do whatever, and you give it something, and it gives you something back. How it does it, who cares? The box is magic. Well, she uses the analogy of like you're throwing a ball over the fence or something like that, and then they throw it back, and it's changed. So you throw a red ball over the fence, and then they paint it blue, and they send it back to you. The action of handing off the ball is you passing it to the function, and then the action of them throwing the ball back after they've done something to it is the return value. Thought that was kind of a cool way to think of it. All right, but here, we just have a function that's going to echo stuff out. Now, right now, the web page, nothing's changed. I refresh it, other than I fixed the spelling there. It's exactly the same. There's a nice little thing that we can do now where I can have more user input. Like maybe we also got them to say Eve, right? I can pass in the word Eve, and now I get another one, right? We're already well on our way to doing this. And I can make another one that says senile felines. That's a palindrome, right? And so on down the line. This is basically what we want. We want a bunch of these, but we're not quite there with our efficiency levels yet. There's one huge issue here that I have with the function. Any thoughts on what we could do to make that a better function?
Output as well.
Yes, it's doing the output as well. It's a mutator function. It's not returning anything. We call those helper functions or mutator functions. Mutator functions don't return anything. So if you're from the Java world, that's where your return type is void, right? It doesn't return anything. It just does something. I don't like those kind of functions, at least not when we're dealing with some text that we're going to put on the screen, right? If I'm mutating something in the background, that's one thing, but this is displaying stuff. So I want to turn this into a return. So how could I make this return that value? Because what is it going to return ultimately? It's going to return this whole thing right here multiple times every time we call it. So how can we turn that into a return?
Put it all in the one string, get rid of a bunch of echoes.
Yep, replace all the echoes with a variable called, return or something like that, right? It doesn't have to be called return. It could be whatever you want. And often I'll call it retval, like return value. And then you literally have to just, instead of saying echo, we just say return dot equals that, because you're concatenating on, right? And that is the operation, just like plus equals in the other languages. Dot equals is saying, in other words, it's doing this. It's saying return equals return dot this, right? This line 19 and line 20 are the same thing. Okay, this is just a shortcut here. Just like instead of saying x equals x plus 1, we can just say x plus plus, right? Just a shortcut. Okay, so now here's the cool part. It's really easy to fix this. Just grab this in your copy buffer here, Control C or Command C on a Mac. Double click on the word echo and paste with Control V. So we just now replaced echo with return. So now I have this huge variable and its value is literally that highlighted stuff on the screen. That's what return equals at the moment. All I got to do now is return, right? So return, or again, you can call that variable whatever you want if it's less confusing to you. So now what do we got to change? Our code's broken now. Yeah, so this function literally, and I do mean this literally, gets replaced with that, except we're not saying to echo that out, right? We're not saying to echo that. So we want to echo that, and we want to echo that, and we want to echo that, and nothing changed. But now it's much more efficient. Now that we have this function working here, we have a new issue, and there's nothing logically wrong with this, there's nothing syntactically wrong with this, but there's some efficiency issues. And I'll give you a hint, the problem lies between lines 11 and 15. So here's the issue here. What I want to do is, I don't want to have to call this function 18,000 times, and I don't want to have, what's that going to be like? The user inputs something and then they're going to input it again. So now I've got input user 2 and I got input user 3, and this one's going to be Eve, and this one's going to be Bob, and now I've got this here with user input 2. This is user input 3. Everybody see that code? Nothing will change with what I just did. It's still not efficient, right? Because how many inputs am I going to have? 20, 30, 40, 50? How many am I going to have from the user? Eventually, we're going to build this thing so that the user can enter however many they want within a limit we give them. Maybe you're not allowed to enter more than 20 or whatever. This can get big and scary and yucky. Introducing arrays, right? This is where an array is very, very useful. So take a look here. This little box right here has a big fat X on it. This is a variable. A variable, we're not talking about arrays right now, just a plain old variable. What does a variable do? It holds content. This is a block in memory that's called X, and the computer knows that we're eventually going to store something in it. At the moment, we have a value stored in it. 7, right? That's what's stored in there. Later in our program, we might change that to something else. Like, I don't know, maybe that. Right? So now, what's in X? Beavis. Okay? We can put whatever we want in there. We can change it to whatever we want. That's roughly, very basically, how variables work. Okay? An array is a variable that has a name, just like the other one, but it has much more flexibility and a lot more fun stuff. So here we have one of these pill containers. for morning, noon, night pills or whatever, right? It's labeled X. This is a variable. Also happens to be an array. And this particular one has 4 compartments in it. 0, 1, 2, and 3. And inside of 0, I can put something. Inside of 1, I can put something. I can put something in 2, and I can put something in 3. So now, but the whole thing is just called X. If I want to access this first compartment, 0, I will say X0. If I want to get this one, I say X1, and this one is X2, and X3, and so forth. That's how an array works. Again, the idea is, if I want to get a hold of a piece of this, I'm still calling this one variable called X. So now, in each slot, I can put a palindrome in every one of these, in 0, 1, 2, and 3, right? And then I can access it later. Okay, so how does this play out in the code? Well, we're going to take a variable here that we'll call inputs, like all the inputs. And I'm going to set it equal to some value that's going to be from the user. Now, if you know how to create an array in Java, purge that from your brain for the next couple minutes. All right? Java is very strict about creating arrays. You have to tell it how big the array is going to be. You have to, all kinds of things. In PHP and in JavaScript, you don't have to do any of that. So I can just start off by putting square brackets around this, and I can say this right here. And now what's cool about the way this works in PHP, if I do this, it's smart enough to know Madam went into the 0th spot in that little pill box. Eve's going to go into the first spot. It just knows, okay? And then we'll put statcats into the next spot. To print this out, whoa, I don't know what I did there. Print this out, we just say, give me the 0th element, right? That'll print out the Madam. It'll pass Madam to the function. Give me the first element, also referred to as the 1th element sometimes, just because the nature that's not truly the first element. The first element is the 0th element, right? So now we're just simply saying, give me whatever's in the 0th spot, which will be the first thing up here. If I were to have done this, then the 0th spot would be Eve, right? This should work, unless I got a syntax error or a parse error that you guys could mock me for. And there we go. Nothing changed other than I put statcats instead of whatever was there. Now, if I want to add more to the array, I just have to simply do this, and I can say Bob or whatever, and then I have to print this. Now, those of you who are in the know and have dealt with arrays before, you know this is still not very efficient. Okay, we'll get there, I promise. But all I have to do is just keep adding new elements to the array. There's lots of ways to do that, by the way. There's a function that's called array push, and in it you mention the name of the array you want to push, and you put the value. So what's another palindrome? We'll do race car. There we go. Thanks. So now I can input, sorry, that's inputs, but I can push into the inputs array race car, and now that'll be in the 4th spot. And if I want to get race car to display, I put it right there. Refresh it, and there we go. There's race car. Okay. But there's a better way. Okay, there's a better way. Another thing you could do to create an array is you can start off by saying inputs equals array, and then put in a value. So we'll do, this is not a palindrome, alley cats, and I can stop there, and it's just going to add alley cats to the list, right? I can add more though. I can say, here's another one. I did I? Now I've got 2 things I pushed. I created the array on line 11 now. Added 2 things to it by using this array function. And then the 0th element at the moment is alley cats. This one is the first element. This is the 2nd element, 3rd, 4th, 5th. And so I need 2 more spots, right? Is that right? May have done my math wrong there. We'll see. By getting out of bounds error. No, we're good. So there's alley cats, and I did I. Now I did I is a palindrome. What's wrong with it though? Why is it saying false? Punctuation, right? Let's fix that real quick, then we'll go back to this mess we're doing here. Remember, eventually we're going to use regular expression, right? But for now, we're going to just do this crap right here. So I'm going to put one for question marks, and we'll put one for slashes and other slashes, and that's going to escape. So this is what you're talking about. If you want to escape a slash, you got to escape the slash, right? And we'll do periods, commas. That should be good for now. Okay, so here we go. This is good enough for now. We got that to work. We may come across some more later. And when we learn regular expression, we're going to turn this into one little teeny line. That's easy. But for now, this is good. All right, back to the real reason we're here, though, today. Let's deal with all of this. Rather than doing echo 10 times or whatever, what did we learn about last time we were here that would help us with all this? A for loop, or a loop in general, right? A for loop's a good use case for this. So let's do for, and we'll talk about that one in a minute. For x equals 0, while x is less than something, we'll talk about that in just a minute. Then we're going to increment, and inside of this brackets, all we need is just one of these guys. That's it. And then we put here x. And now it's going to just loop through. We have to tell it how big to loop. We'll get to that in a minute. So right now, let's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 things in there. So right now, and again, don't freak out if you know what's going on there. We'll fix that in a minute. But for now, this is good, right? It'll loop through 7 times, which is how big the array is. And on the first iteration, x will be 0, and so it'll print out the 0th element, which is alley cats. The next iteration, it prints out the first element, because x will be 1, and so forth. And behold, nothing changed when I refresh the page. Right? Much better, right? Also note, no curly braces needed, folks. It's one line. This is totally valid code. I know it annoys some people, but it's just fine. Refresh, and there you go. I'll probably leave it like that for a moment. Now, the problem though is this line right here, because what happens if I add a new thing to my array here, and I'm going to try to test out if chicken is a palindrome, and now when I refresh it, chicken, why did chicken show up? Oh, because I put it before race car. I was not expecting that. Race car now fell off though, because it's the last element in the array. That was a trip right there. Okay, so we need to say loop through 0 to however long the array is, and what's the mantra I gave you on day 1? There's a function for that, and it's called size of. We just pass in the array, and it'll count how many elements are in it for us. And it'll return a number, and it'll go right there. This will literally turn into the number 8 by magic.
So basically just like dot length.
It's like dot length or something like that, yeah. Yep. Depending on the language. Every language has got a different version of it. But now, race car should be at the bottom, and sure enough it is. And if I were to add a couple more things like liver and donkey, whatever, just making stuff up, it magically just keeps adding them on the list, okay? So there we go. We've made a loop, and it's one line of code and literally one line to loop through that entire array. Okay, I promise you last week we would talk about, or last time we met, we'd talk about a for each loop. That's the one loop we did not cover the other day. For each loops are very unique and specific for using for arrays. That's the whole reason we have them. And the syntax is simple. So let's just comment this one out for a minute. And it's for each is the phrase here. And this whole crap here, the only reason we even have that in a for loop is because we have to determine what element to start with, 0, and how long to go. And we have to say, make sure you don't forget to increment, right? All this stuff, we got to baby it. Well, don't bother. Just say whatever the variable is, inputs, as we can say input or whatever. It doesn't matter what you use here. The real important thing is the array you're looping through as some other variable. This variable could be Beavis, doesn't matter. This one is the only one that has to be a specific name, and it has to be the name of your array. So what I'm saying is loop through the inputs array, and then each element, assign it to the variable Beavis, right? So take the 0th element and set Beavis equal to inputs bracket 0. And then do something with that. So what we need to do now, instead of brackets there, we just do this, right? So this is just simply saying, hey, loop through inputs, and with each iteration, assign whatever value you're on to Beavis, and then echo, then do whatever you're going to do with Beavis. And then the next loop, you take the first element and assign it to Beavis, so it overwrites what was there, and it just keeps doing that over and over again. Nothing changed. I just refreshed the page, and it all works fabulously. So the last thing I want to do at the moment here is I want to clean this up. I mean, we don't normally want to have multiple methods of doing this, right? There's a lot of stuff here. So an easy way to do it is just put all these into this array here, okay? So now all I've done is just dumped everything into this inputs equals array, and I put all the values in there. And if you turn off word wrap, you can see it's just one nice long line of code there. Eventually, when we build line 9 to get the input from the user, we're going to have a form that they've decided, hey, I want to enter 3 palindromes. So there'll be 3 fields on the screen. They'll put one in each field, they'll click submit, and we'll build this array on the fly. But for now, we're just going to say we somehow magically got it. So we can get rid of this. And now this is pretty clean code here, right? Just line 11 and 13 does all this work for us. The next thing I'm going to do is going to mess with your heads a little bit because of something I always tell you every day in class, and if you're in my 1430 class, I say all the time, and that is you don't put anything outside of the body or the head tag, right? The truth is you don't put any HTML outside of the body or the head tag. You don't put any JavaScript, but you can put PHP. Why can you put PHP outside of the head tag? Or the, yeah, if it's not, if the PHP is not actually echoing anything out, because all echo does is prints HTML. If it's not echoing anything, then it's not going to be there because it all runs on the server, does its job, and it never makes it to the browser. So what I like to do, anything like this that's a function that's not really, it's just returning something, get it out of the way. So I'm going to move all that and we're going to put it down here, out of the way, out of sight, out of mind, right? Now all these functions are down here, they're out of the way, they're not bothering anybody, you don't have to see them, and there's our nice clean HTML page, right? Not a whole lot going on there. And this, we'll even eventually get this out of here, and we'll probably have a function here that works with line 9 when we build that part, that just is a function that gathers all the input. And then we'll just have one little thing there that says get the input, and then we'll have one little thing there that says loop through the array. Now we could even turn this into a function that just says, that's called loop through the array, and we have that function somewhere else and we call it and it just loops through the array. There's lots of ways you can do this, but this is good for now. Nice and clean. Eventually I'll show you guys how to put this stuff on line 17 and beyond into a separate file, and then you don't have to even see it, right? But this is pretty clean, I think, right? I'm just going to put a couple spaces there so we don't have to look at that. But when you refresh, I look at it, and we go in here, and nothing happens. There's nothing outside of the HTML other than those few line breaks I made, right? That's it. This is a raw HTML that you would have hand-coded manually if you weren't using PHP. Dig it?
That's a dig-em smack.
So the main mission today, today's lecture is called Introduction to Arrays or something like that. I wanted you to be familiar with arrays, and the reason we had last time's lecture, it's to get you used to the idea of for loop or just loops in general, and this is a really good use case for loops, obviously, looping through an array, and the for each loop in particular. Last time we talked about a bunch of other types of loops, but now, for each loop and arrays. That's the big message of today. But I got a couple of little miscellaneous things that suddenly you may like PHP a little bit less. And this is something that kind of bugs me too. But overall, PHP is my favorite language to program in. So here we go. I don't know, maybe I'll do that. And I'll do that. I don't know. And oh, let's just do that. What? That's good enough. That's all valid, folks. Every bit of that's valid. Totally valid. We'll run it. It is not case sensitive. Look at that. Nothing changed. Okay, but wait, there's more. So, is palindrome? That's a function I wrote. Right here? Let's go with that. And oh, look, it still works. But wait, there's more. So this variable here that's called return. Let's go with return. And uh-oh, it doesn't work. To me, that's bad. Because sometimes it's case sensitive and sometimes it isn't. Right? No, I do know which is which. But if you have to remember which is which. So variable names are case sensitive. Keywords and functions are not. Why? I don't know. You could argue that it is heresy, maybe. Just be aware of it, and the reason you got to be aware of it is because of this. Let me back out of some of this stuff here and clean it back up the way it was. Take, for example, our function called array push. Okay? In order to type this, you have to hit the shift key, right? I know every one of you have done this. You wanted to type the word the, capital T, H-E, and you did this just because you didn't let go of the shift key fast enough. We've all done that when we're typing something in a Word document or whatever. That happens to me all the time with this function right here. I didn't let go of my shift key fast enough and I get that. Which is fine, it's not, it'll work. It's case sensitive. It's not case sensitive, so it will work, okay? But what if I'm pushing into an array that's, in this case, called input, and again, you have to hit the shift key for input, or for the $sign, and then maybe you didn't let go fast enough and you got a capital I on accident. And then whatever you're gonna put into it, Bob, we'll just put Bob in there again. Whatever you want to put into it is here. It doesn't matter. You can put capital or whatever because we deal with that in our palindrome function. But if I run this, I'll get an error because inputs is capitalized and that's not how the variable is actually spelled. The reason that can become a problem as a programmer, you'll look at line 13 and you'll see, oh, I accidentally put a capital P for that PHP function. Then I change it to lowercase thinking that'll fix the problem, but it doesn't change it. And you're like, okay, I guess the case doesn't matter. So that has nothing to do with it. So you think in your head, oh, case doesn't matter. So you just disregard that as even a possibility that's causing the problem. That can happen. That has happened to many a programmer. So you need to be aware that it's not case sensitive unless it's a variable name. Just stick with that. But the best thing to do, just pick a case and stick with it. A lot of people write in all caps and I hate that. That's gross. The only time I do all caps that feels right to me is with SQL. For some reason that feels better all caps. I don't know why that is, but in my brain that works better. Just be aware, it's a problem, it exists. All right, so the last functionality we're gonna add to this program here, we'll touch on a concept of how variable scope works a little bit in PHP. The big message of the day is arrays and looping through them. We got that, line 11 through 13 right there. The next thing I wanted to do is just point out the issues with case sensitivity. The next thing I want to show you is how to deal with a global variable, okay? So we're gonna have a variable that's right here in the highest up PHP opening bracket we've got. Sometimes I have PHP up here in line 1, but right now it's just right here. And I want a variable that's called evil counter, and I'm setting it to 0. What I want to do is count how many instances of the word cat is in all of the palindromes we're looking for, right? If we look through here, let me refresh it. Hopefully I got rid of all my errors. Yeah, like there's the word cat right there. There's another one right there. I want to count how many instances of evil are on this site.
That makes me angry. And when Dr. Evil gets angry, Mr. Bigglesworth gets upset.
So I need to increment that every time I find the word cat. Where in the code am I going to increment that? It's in the output function, right? So in here, we take input. All input is one value from one spot in the array. And it's the first time this function on line 15 runs, it's the 0th element that's being passed down here. And then the next time it's the first element, and so on down the line. So with each one of these, I just need to look inside of the input variable and see if there's a cat in it, right? So there's a function for that. It's called string POS. That is not an acronym for anything. It stands for position. String POS. And I can never remember if it's, yeah, oh yeah, for sure. It's not how I feel, it's just the factual truth. So string POS, no underscore. I put an underscore there on accident. There's no underscore. String POS. And we're going to, now look at, in Notepad, you get a little bit of help here. Notice here that the first thing it says is the haystack, the next thing is the needle. So the haystack is what? Yeah, I'm looking at input, that's the haystack. And inside of the haystack, I'm looking for cat. That's it. Now this returns a value. The value it returns is the position in the string. And a string is just an array of characters. The question was, what happens if it's not there? If cat is not found, it returns false, right? But there's a little issue. It returns the position in the string where it is. So in other words, let's look here. So look at StatCats here, and again, ignore the fact that it's capital right there. The S is the 0th element, the T is the first element, A is 2, C is 3, K is 4, space is 5, C is 6. So when it searches through StatCats, this will turn into a 6, okay? Which is fine. There's a problem that we'll run into in just a minute, but for now, let's just go with this. So if string position, then I want to increment this guy right here. That's it. If there is a value, if string position is some value, remember in PHP, everything except for 0 and false are true, right? So 6 is true. So if line 23, if true, 6 is true, then increment the counter. Yes, so good question. The question is, what exactly is it returning? And it's returning the starting position of the string you're looking for. So it finds the word cat and it goes, oh, cat starts at 6. It's at the 6th position, right? That's okay, because as long as it finds the string cat, then you're good. Because this will find cats. Because I'm just looking, is CAT somewhere in there? And it's saying, yes, it's at position 6, okay? And so that turns into a 6. I'll get you in a second, Jake. So if that turns into a 6, if 6 is true, 6 is true, right? Everything's true except for false and 0. Then increment the counter, right? What happens if cat is first?
Good question.
If cat's first, then it's going to return 0, and that is false, and the counter will not increment. That's an issue we'll deal with another day, but that is a real issue. Okay, we might have time to do it today, but we only got a few minutes. But let's start here, because the real thing I want to point out is this is not going to work. That counter will not increment because that counter is not in this function. It's up here. It's a global variable. It's outside of any particular function. So I could, inside of this function, make my own evil counter variable and set it at 0, but that won't work either because every time I run the function, it resets to 0. Yeah. So I need to get that global one, right? So the way you do that is inside this function, you have to declare the evil counter variable, but you say, I'm declaring this counter, but I'm talking about the global one. And so this, you just literally say global, whatever the variable name is, and it goes, oh, you want that variable. Okay. It's like kind of like the this keyword in a Java function if you're trying to get the class level variable. If you don't know what Java is about or don't know what I just said, just ignore that little piece. But if you understand that maybe will help clarify this. So now I am incrementing this big global variable out here. Now, once I've done this and looped through every iteration, I can just echo out, we'll go with the P, there is evil counter evil on this site, right? You follow what I'm doing there? So what happens here, this loop is going to run through all of those inputs, right, all of these guys, and it's going to pass in alley cats right here. And when it passes in alley cats, evil counter increments, right? Then it's going to pass him, did I? And evil counter will not increment, and so on down the line. It increments again at stat cats. Once I've gone through everything, I'm done, and I'm at the end with race car. Then we go to this line of code. We're outside of any loops, and it's going to echo that just once at the very bottom of the page. And there is one evil on this site. And the reason it says 1 instead of 2 is because of case sensitivity, right? Because that's capital, and the other one is right here, lowercase. So it found alley cats. So we can fix that easy enough. We can just simply say string to lower input, and now it's going to lowercase the input value, whatever that is, and compare the lowercase version to lowercase cat. And now we have, there is 2 evils on this side. Well, bad grammar aside, right? It's accomplishing what we want. Dig it?
Dig 'em.
Next time we meet, this will have this exact same thing, but I will have added some CSS to it that will make it look a little prettier, and so it's not just scrolling off the screen infinitely, okay? But other than that, the code won't change. It's just a little extra CSS. Any questions about anything we covered today? We have arrays now as a tool we can use, and we have a for each loop so we can loop through it. We can also just use a regular for loop. That's totally valid too if you prefer that method. Some people that computes better. We now know that things are not very case sensitive in PHP. And we also have one new keyword on our hands called global that allows us to dip outside of our own little function scope when we're in a function. And we learned a new function today, string position. Okay? Any questions?
Say good morning with a dig 'em smack.
Dig 'em.
Just one breakfast starts like that. Kellogg's Sugar Smacks.
Dig 'em.
Toasted wheat plus 8 good vitamins. Kellogg's Sugar Smacks.
Dig 'em.
I dig Sugar Smacks.
What's wrong with that frog's airplane?
Engine croak.
They're part of your good breakfast. Kellogg's Sugar Smacks.
That's a dig 'em smack.